Hi guys, Matt Hancock's here, and I'm back with another instalment of how to optimize your hormone balance. And basically we're going to focus on one of the key components of your specific protocols that you're currently doing, and this is where we look at confusing the calories. Confusing your calories. This is so vitally important at this stage of the program, and will really kind of kick-start things again if you've kind of hit a plateau, if things have slowed down a little bit, because we make sure that we are focusing on the main, what I would call, driver and commander hormone, which is called leptin. Now, you may have heard of leptin, you may not, but basically leptin is stored within all of our adipose tissue, which are fat cells, and it communicates with the brain. So for example, eating a large meal increases the amount of leptin, and this increase is detected by the brain and leads to the feeling of satisfaction and fullness that we often experience after eating. So it kind of leads us to stop eating further, or stop overeating. Now unfortunately, if we don't have sufficient levels of leptin, then our brain cannot detect the leptin we do have, and will simply overeat. This is a massive problem if you're trying to lose weight and change the shape of your body. So what we've got to kind of look at is, okay, well, what do we do about that, right? So basically I'd like to kind of give the example at this stage of a fuel gauge, right? So imagine you're putting fuel into your car. The gauge will only allow you to fill the tank, and then it will cut off the flow of fuel so you don't overfill. And that's kind of like what leptin does, right? So when you're eating and you've taken enough on, then the leptin will signal to the brain that you've eaten enough, and you'll stop eating. So this shut-off mechanism, right, doesn't work in people that have leptin resistance. And so you overeat, you can't really portion control, and therefore you have issues with weight. So the thing is, like, it's not just, you might be thinking, well, okay, well, I'm not necessarily I've been losing weight, I'm not necessarily carrying too much anymore, I'm losing weight, so therefore my leptin might be alright. But the thing is, as you shed fat and reduce calories, right, your leptin levels will go down. So this can leave you feeling hungry, and it can also produce sort of powerful cravings. And this is it's like most people that are on diets, you get like sugar cravings and carb cravings, and we kind of are controlling those because we've balanced our blood sugars already, and so generally our cravings will be okay. But what we've got to remember is we have been following a fairly strict diet now for a good 8 weeks, and what happens is that your body kind of does get used to it, and it does need a change up, alright? And it might be that you're hitting a plateau at the moment, even though you're sticking to the program religiously, and that's why we need to make sure that we're doing all these things right now, so that we can kind of make get it kick-started again. So what I think is that one of the best ways of, and what I found one of the best ways of sort of getting leptin levels on the rise, is by manipulating carbohydrate levels. Now, I have done a lot of research in this before, and we were like, you can only spike your leptin if you kind of go on a massive sugar and fat binge, but you don't have to do that at all. You just have to manipulate your carbohydrates, and as you'll find out on this program, what we're going to do is all our carbohydrates are actually good carbohydrates, but it works to increase your leptin levels without having the side effects of maybe putting a little bit of weight on and going on a massive binge. So this is kind of what we need to do. We need to break this cycle and make sure that our leptin levels are high enough that they work and can control our appetite a little bit and control our portion sizes. Okay. So how do we do that? Obviously, one way is to make sure that we're having the right amount of balance of macronutrients, which we've been doing all along, but I think at this stage now what we need to do is just manipulate those a little bit. And so you're going to go into carbohydrate cycling. Now, low carb diets are great, and you may have heard about them, you may have done them before even, and they are great for losing fat in the short term. The drawbacks, unfortunately, are fatigue, brain fog, loss of training performance, and then you're going to inevitable uncontrollable cravings for carbs. Okay, so I don't think that cutting carbs out altogether from your diet is necessarily a good thing, but you could cut them out for, you know, almost like a period, have periodic days where you do carb loading and periodic days where you have low carbs. And if you do that through the week, then you tend to kind of confuse your calories up, because obviously when you have higher carb days you're going to have more calories than when you have a low carb day, and that calorie manipulation, if you like, really affects the leptin in such a level that you keep firing up and you keep losing weight. So it's really good and really effective. So here's an example. So for instance, on a Monday you'd have high carbs. Now, by high carbs what we actually mean is just going from 40% carbohydrate, which you've been used to doing at the moment with your macro nutrient breakdown, to taking it up to 50% at the expense of fat, which you'll drop down to 20 instead of 30. Your protein will stay the same, so that will always be 30. On the same day as high carbs, what we want to do is we want to benefit from those extra calories that we're going to have in our diet on that particular day and go heavy with our training. So we're not only going to confuse the calories with what we put into our body, we're also going to confuse the calories with the types of training that we do. Alright, and this is really important. So when you density or strength train, which is high, you're going to make the use of the extra carbohydrate in your body and you'll be able to train really well. You won't actually burn as many calories in the session doing a density or strength training as you would doing a metabolic training session, but it doesn't matter, okay, because what you get is you get a really good afterburn in terms of you've been weight training, so you're going to effectively increase your lean tissue mass, and therefore you're going to be burning more fat just by being that little bit more toned, yeah, because muscle will uses fat as for energy, and so you know you will burn that extra fat off your body just by having the extra lean tissue. So it's great. Following the high carb, you want to go to low carb, and then what you want to do is to maximize the fact that you're going to have this calorie deficit by going really hard with your cardio hit, so you can further that deficit and get a really good weight loss. Then you'll go into moderate carbs, so you literally go to moderate carb after low carb, and then that's when you do your metabolic conditioning. So moderate carb and metabolic conditioning is what you've been used to doing up until this point, and we're just going to throw in our cardio hits with our low carb days and our strength training with our high carb days, and it's as simple as that, and we just cycle that through. So you're going to be doing 2 high carb days, 2 moderate carb days, and 3 low carb days, and you just cycle that through for the next 3-4 weeks, and you're going to see massive changes in your body shape. So it's going to be great. You're going to absolutely love it. Now, a lot of my clients love this so much that they actually stick to carbohydrate cycling for longer periods than 4 weeks, and that's absolutely fine. You can do carb cycling as long as you want to. I think it's quite nice to break the cycle. So you know, you might want to do a month of this and then a month of moderate carb, and then go a month of this and a month of moderate carb, or you might want to do 2 months of this and 1 month moderate carb. Either way, you're always remaining clean 80 to 90% of the time, because even on high carbs you're going to have good carbs rather than just any old carbs. So you're still not going to have your white starches, but you're going to stick with, you know, your rice noodles, your sweet potatoes, your rye and spelt breads and things like that on those high carb days, but they're still good carbs. So you're not going to cheat your body and cheat the diet, right? So you're still going to get in optimum shape. So what we need to do at this point, I've never ever talked really about calories. We've never looked at calories, but at this point, when we get a little bit more specific, it's a really good idea that we make sure that we are eating the right amount of calories for our needs, if you like, especially as we're trying to lose weight, and we need to make sure that we're doing that right at this point. Now, I don't want you to be calorie counting. I just want you to get an idea of what you should be doing, and then use myfitnesspal.com as just as a guide to make sure that your calories are about right, that your portion sizes are spot on, and that most importantly, your macronutrients on the specific days are as they should be. So on low carb day, you're going to make sure that there's obviously minimal carbs, and it's just proteins and fats. On a moderate carb day, it's your 40-30-30 split, as you have been doing, and then on a high carb day, it's 50-30-20. Okay. Now those macronutrient cycles need to be as close to those as possible, and it's very, very important that you kind of get a good feel for that. I've obviously put meal plans together for your low, moderate and high carb days, but you just need to make sure that the portion sizes are right for you at this moment in time. Obviously, when I put them together, they're very generic, and it's like, yeah, this will feed 4 people, but depending on what size you are now, what your calorie needs are, will determine whether that will actually feed 4 of you, or if it would feed 3 3/4 of you. Okay, and it's very important that we kind of get that right now. So I don't agree with a lot of ways of doing your calorie needs, okay, because most are done on total body weight, and we're only interested in our lean tissue because that's what's metabolizing the majority of the calories. Okay, so what we want to be doing is finding out how much you weigh in pounds first of all, and you must work out your fat percentage. Now, the best way to do it is obviously to go to use body fat calipers or body scales, bioimpedance scales. If you haven't got them yourself, you can go into a lot of sort of places like a lot of pharmacies have them, and Boots chemists and things like that will have scales that will measure your body fat percentage. There are other online sites that will measure your body fat percentage by actual circumferences of your body. So if you can't get out to a chemist, or you can't find one anywhere, then you could always go that route. It's not very accurate, but it will give you an idea. Obviously, once you know your total weight and you know your fat percentage, you can then work out your lean body mass, which is a pretty very, very straightforward calculation. Basically, if I am, say, 181 pounds and my body fat is 11%, therefore what I would do is I would multiply 181 pounds by 0.11, or by 11%, which would give me 161.1 pounds of lean body mass. Now, once I've got my lean body mass, I need to work out what my calorific intake will be. And all I do is I look at the current body fat. Mine's 11, so it's in the top scale there, 6 to 12. Therefore, I times 161 by 17, and I come out with 2,738 calories. Now, that's what I should be eating per day, and then I can just break that down through how many meals I want to eat in a day, and therefore I know my calorific breakdown per meal. Simple as that. So at this stage, you don't have to. If you find 5 meals a day a little bit hard work at the moment, because you've now balanced your blood sugars and everything is running as it should, you could actually cut your food down. So you could cut down to 3 meals a day, as long as your calorific intake is equally spread along those 3 meals. What you don't want to be doing is eating far less than your daily calorific intake, because you obviously want to eat a little bit less than your daily calorific intake, because we're trying to lose a little bit of weight, okay? But if you take it too far, so more than sort of 500 down from your daily calorific intake, then you're just going to your body's just going to go into a massive rebound later, further on down the line. So you're going to cut your calories down a little bit based on how much weight you want to lose, but you know, you've got to be realistic about it, you've got to be sensible about it. So 500 calories below your daily calorific intake is really the maximum amount. But it depends what your daily calorific intake is. If your daily calorific intake is 1,500, then you're not going to drop 500 off and only have 1,000 calories a day, because you just would not survive. Okay, so you've got to be sensible about it. If you have any questions, you can always talk to me about it, but generally you just want to cut the calories down a little bit on what your daily needs are, and that's where you'll get your weight loss from. Okay, but as long as you're supplying your body with the right amount of nutrients, so the foods have to be spot on, the foods have to be, you can't just lower your calories but eat the wrong foods, okay, because it doesn't work like that. Your food has to still be absolutely spot on with everything we've been doing so far, and then you'll just reduce it slightly from what you perhaps have been doing. Okay, easy peasy. So low carb days, then what you've got to do is you've got to make sure you're eating between 1.5 and 2 grams of protein per pound of lean body mass. So for me, you know, if I've got to eat 2,738 calories on a low carb day, I've definitely got to have 2 grams of protein per pound, because I simply can't get the amount of calories from vegetables, right? No matter how many vegetables I eat. So I go for 2 grams of protein per pound of lean tissue, which will come out at 322.2 grams of protein. Yeah, so I kind of get I get my protein from that, and then the rest of it will just be made in from the vegetables. So I might have 3,222, because there's 4 calories per gram, so that will come out at 3,222 calories from protein, which is higher than my daily needs, but that's because I want to put on a little bit of weight. So that's how I do it. It's as simple as that. And then the vegetables, I don't include vegetables in my calorie consumption, okay, because there's not a lot of calories in them, no matter how many you eat. So they just give you the vital nutrients that you need. Alright, so that's what you would do. You make sure that you work that out, and you'd probably be having 1.5 grams of protein, I should think, per lean body mass. That's all you do on low carb day. Okay, so moving on to moderate carb day, that's just the 40-30-30 split that you are used to. The only difference being, now that you're carb cycling, you won't be having a lot of the fruits that you were before. I mean, there's plenty of fruits that you'll be eating, but you won't be having, say, bananas and things with a real high GI. Okay, you'll be able to introduce the Greek yogurt at this point, because that's not included. You can't have that on your low carb day. There's too many carbs in it. So you introduce the Greek yogurt on moderate carb days, and of course you can introduce extra vegetables now. These have a higher GI than the list before, which kind of we call free vegetables. So you can add these vegetables now to your list. So you've got you've got your fruit, your yogurt, and your vegetables, as well as all your legumes now. So you're eating pretty much everything that you can possibly want to eat. And so that's kind of what you've been doing already. Then you'd go into your high carb day, which means that you're going to be having 50% from your carbs, 30% from protein, 20% from your fats. So you're going to be adding in now your rye, your spelt, your buckwheats, your grains, your quinoa and your oats, gluten-free oats. Also your sweet potato and your rice, and your rice noodles and manuka honey. So these are kind of the stuff you want to add in. You might even want to add in oat cakes as well on your high carb day. Okay, so there's plenty of choices for you. You'll be able to have some rice noodles now with your stir fries, or you'll be able to have rice with your chili, and it will kind of feel like a cheat day. So it will give you all the benefits of a cheat day without actually, and it will take your leptin level up, but you haven't got all the bad side effects of putting weight on, alright, because you're not having to binge. So that's basically how the carb cycling works. Obviously there's loads of other ways of doing it, and it can be very, very complicated. Hopefully I've made it nice and easy for you to understand. There's a few foods that we've eliminated for each section. As long as you get your splits right, you're okay, and you can use myfitnesspal.com in order to make sure that you have got the splits okay. So, you know, that's it really as far as the nutrition is concerned. It's pretty, I think it's pretty straightforward, and I'm sure you'll agree. But if you do have any questions, then obviously just get in touch. So moving on to movement philosophy. Now, at this stage, I'd like to introduce you to my 5 P's of performance, okay, and the kind of way that we train. And I train all my clients at the studio, whether it be one-to-one, semi-private or groups. We all follow the same system. And I'm going to talk you through this now so you have a real good idea about how it works. Now obviously you've got the manuals on movement philosophy, so you may have read through it, you may have not, but I'm going to give you a little brief about it now, and we can kind of move through pretty swiftly. So basically, I start off with periodization. Now I train everyone this way. This is how athletes train. This is how the body needs to train. You have to have periods of progressive exercise programming with then periods of sort of lower intensity and rest, and you have to cycle that round, because if you keep forever increasing intensity or volume with no recovery or no deload, then you're simply going to overtrain and burn out. Okay, now so this is why we periodize training. We periodize it so that we challenge ourselves and we get amazing results, but then we have rest as well, so that our body can recover and we can release, we can make sure that we release the right hormones and we're not stressing our bodies too much. Okay, just if you want to know about stress, just recap and go back to the stress video that I did last week. So basically what you have is a macro cycle. For us on this program is, you know, a 12-week period, a macro cycle, so it's 12 weeks long, and it has 3 different mesocycles of 4 weeks. Now each mesocycle has specific nutritional manipulation. So first off, we just got you doing the cleanse, then we've got you doing kind of the weight loss and the direct aid and focusing on hormone balancing, and now we're doing hormone optimization, where we kind of really get into the guts of it and being a little bit more specific in the way that we manipulate our calories. Okay, so there's 3 specific mesocycles, and then we've got our microcycles, which is kind of like your weekly program, and that would be likened to kind of like you doing your exercise program on a 30-30, 40-20, 45-15, 50-10. That's your microcycle. You get a new one, you go into another. You go into another one. So you do a 30-30, 40-20, 45-15, 50-10 again, but it's completely different exercises. So that's kind of how your microcycles work, and that's what periodization is all about. Yeah. So altogether, your training, you know, you should consider putting together the kind of the mesocycle plan that builds over a month. Excuse me. Before having an easier week, and then building that up again, and you just keep cycling that round. So what happens is you get a nice variety, you get a nice balance, and of course you get amazing results by living by this kind of way of training. If you don't do periodization, I'm afraid all that happens is you get no overload, no progression, you don't get results, and you end up wasting a lot of your time at the gym doing pretty much nothing. Okay, so that's really important. You get your head around that, and that it increases each month over the cycle. So great. So next we move into pre-generation, and pre-generation is basically deals with release work. Now, this is kind of based from professional athletes, but obviously from my background in sports therapy. And basically it draws our attention to fascia. Okay, we need to prepare the tissues for movement, and trigger pointing and releasing the fascia is, for me, is some of the best things you can do. Right? It only takes kind of 5 to 10 minutes before you start your exercise, and it just prepares the body. Fascia, if you don't know, is connective tissue. All right, it actually unites the whole body, and it can tighten and cause kind of faulty patterns and pain up and down the body. Very often stretching only exacerbates the situation. So if you kind of liken it to an elastic band, and it's got a knot on it, and if you pull either side of that knot, either side of the elastic band, okay, of the knot, it will kind of just tighten up even more. So stretching will just cause the fascia to tighten more. So we need to actually get that knot out, and you do that. I mean, if any of you have had trigger point release work done by a physiotherapist or a sports masseuse, you know, a sports therapist, they will get in, they'll do a trigger point massage and release the tension, and you'll feel that you've got more movement again. Now, trigger point therapy or self-mobilization means that you can do it yourself using tools that are really phenomenal now. There's a company called TP therapy, or trigger point therapy. They've brought out foam rollers that kind of change the game a little bit, called grids, G-R-I-D, grids, and you can release all your sort of your trigger points and get the movement going. And we do this before every single one of our sessions gets into gear. Really, we do it at the beginning of every single one of our sessions, whether it be personal training, semi-private or groups. We always do some form of trigger point release work. Okay, so have a look at have a look at trigger point therapy. They do sell them on Amazon. They're only about £35 for the grid, and I can give you like a program to do with the grid if you want. I do think they're a great tool, and they will keep you injury free, and they will also improve your movement patterns so much better. Okay, so that's kind of my pre-generation stage. Now, preparation is where we mobilize and warm the body up before we go into lifting weights, or before we go into the kind of main bulk of the session. So mobilization, basically you've got to prepare yourself for movement by doing mobilizers after your trigger pointing. Okay, this is because you've lengthened your fascia now via trigger pointing, and the body's sort of inbuilt communication network, which is called your proprioceptors. You may have heard of it, you may have not, but they get used to they have to get used to this new length of fascia, and so you do this by mobilizing the body. And I've put them up on site for you to have a look. So take you through a sequence of mobilizers that is really good that you'll do. So post release work, but pre warm up. Okay. Then you go into your warm up, which will kind of prepare your body for the movement that's going to come. So you'll do like triplanar movements, squatting, lunging, and just getting you ready for your activity that's about to happen. Yeah, it will increase in intensity, movement, and speed throughout, say, 5 to 6 minutes, while you warm up and get ready to go into your next stage. So your performance, obviously that's where the real work and gains are made. This is the bulk of your session. So this is normally around about 30 minutes or 25-30 minutes. And whether it be metabolic conditioning, strength training, density training, that's basically where you're going to get your stuff from. So you've got some programs that I've written for you, and you want to obviously go to month 3 because that's where we are now, and we're on our last 4 weeks of the program. So this has got here, you'll have a couple of metabolic circuits which you've been used to doing. I've just kind of filled them in for you so you can kind of see what you should be doing at this stage. You'll do your 4 rounds as you have been doing, and you'll finish with a little bit of a hit interval at the end. Okay, so that's kind of what you've been used to doing. Then you've got density circuit. Now the density circuit is slightly different. It's obviously training with dumbbells, and you'll see here it's split into 3 sections of 3. So for instance, there's 3 exercises, A1, A2, A3. you will do, you'll pick the music that you've already got, and you will do 40-20 or 45-15. They're the only two that you'll actually use for density circuit. And what I want you to do is I want you to go through the first exercise, so A1, so let's say it's 40 seconds, 20 seconds rest, go into your plank with row. 40 seconds, 20 seconds rest, go into your A3, which is your stationary lunge or uni press, right? Then you're going to go around and do a second set, and your second set will be exactly the same timings, but you'll take the weight up. And you want to be taking the weight up about 10 to 20%. Okay? Once you've done 2 rounds of A, you go on to B. So you'll do B1, B2, B3, then you'll go around again, B1, B2, B3, with a higher weight. Same thing for C1, C2, C3, and then you go into a big HIIT training session at the end, and you want to be doing your HIITs more kind of a little bit longer duration than you do on your metabolic one, okay? So you're only doing 3 rounds of 6 here, but the weights are going to be such that they're going to be very, very tiring. I want you to really load up and make them heavy, and then go into just a little bit of a metabolic HIIT at the end. The other one that I've put in there is called a strength program. Now, I don't really agree with doing 3 sets of 12 or 3 sets of 15. It's kind of old-fashioned. It doesn't really get the results quick enough in my opinion. So therefore I do strength training a little bit different. What I do is give you 3 exercises to do with a lot of reps, and then you do the number of sets it takes to do those reps. So what you do is you start off with A1, you do as many repetitions as you can, and then you move on to A2. You do as many repetitions as you can, write it down in set 1, and then go into A3, do as many repetitions as you can, write it down in set 1, and then go back and do set 2. You do as many repetitions as you can until you keep repeating that cycle until all these repetitions have been completed. So for instance, if set 1 you did 12 reps, okay, of the stationary lunge and uni press, set 2, after you've done A2 and A3, you come back to A1 and you did 10 reps. So you did 12 and 10, that's 22, leaving you 8 reps to do for your final set. Let's say you did 6, you just couldn't get those last 2 reps out, you have to then do a 4th set and do your final 2. So that's basically how it works. So you could do anything up to 6 sets. For instance, press-ups, it might take you 5 or 6 reps to get 5 to 6 sets to get 40 reps out. But it doesn't matter. It might take you 2 sets for A1, it might take you 5 sets for A2, and it might take you 3 sets for A3. All that matters is you get them done, it chops and changes things, and it means that your rest time is designated by you. So you kind of, when you're ready, you just crack on again. And it's a really, really good way of strength training. Again, weights need to be heavy, okay? You do a dynamic interrupt of inchworms and squat jumps after you've done A1, A2 and A3, after they've all been completed, and then you go into workout set B. Follow exactly the same sequence before finishing off with your plank and punch and burpees. So I've put a couple of the strength exercise programs, I've put a couple of metabolic programs, I've put a couple of density sessions. So you're kind of all covered now, and you will be absolutely flying in terms of your weight loss progress over the next couple of weeks. So just going back to our 5 Ps, our last one is post-generation, and that simply means that we've got to stretch, okay, and we need to do a sufficient stretch. You ask people how long they hold a stretch, and most people will say it's about 5 seconds, okay. A stretch needs to be 40 seconds minimum, okay, longer the better. So, but you definitely want to be holding a stretch between 40 and 60 seconds. Anything up to 90 seconds is really good, but 40 to 60 seconds per stretch, and make sure you have a nice sequence, a yoga stretch. I will post a nice stretching routine up as well, or maybe send it by email, but give you something to do if you wish, if you're a bit limited on your stretches, but I'm sure you're pretty clued up with stretches by now. So we can do that for you. Okay. So yeah, that's that basically. I want you to kind of confuse your calories, switch things up, and really get on with it over the next couple of weeks. Okay. Good luck with it, guys. Catch you later. Bye.